Today we are taking a closer look at the gameplay, and so far there's a lot of things that I found hidden in these trailers, like new open world functions like the map and open missions and upgrades and explorability, so how open world may work, new and old weapons returning, subtle clues in the gameplay, hidden story details, weather and day and night cycles, and tons more to unpack. But first guys, be sure to smash that like button blue because this video took forever to make, and also it's a really quick way to support me making content and help boost the video up the YouTube search results. Thanks so much, let's jump into it. This video is supported by Audible. Snag yourself a free Halo audiobook right down in the description below. We'll get into the shorter gameplay trailer later at the end of this video, but let's talk about the 8-minute demo first. So this video starts with the night setting. Real-time lighting has been confirmed in the gameplay, and it's something to look forward to, but this is our only real look at a mostly dark time of day. The fact that it starts with a notification to start the demo suggests that this demo will be playable for fans at some point. Confirmed on Halo Waypoint, this demo is actually several hours into the campaign. In fact, I was invited along with other content creators just recently, and they confirmed that this part of the campaign is about halfway through the game. Also, I'm not sure if it's just a visual effect because it looks cool, but these magical particle effects makes me wonder that there's something ominous, something kind of magical going on with these ancient structure ruins, probably built by ancient humans, right? But I wonder if they have some secret ability or function in the game. It almost makes me think that they're a portal. They probably have some other function, but just some food for thought. There's also something over here, which I'm pretty sure is just lighting because the sunset is starting to look a little bit pink here. We open with prelude that explains that this is May 28th, 2560. Keep in mind that this is about a year and a half after Halo 5 Guardians, and this is about one day after the date that we saw in the Pelican and the original announcement trailer back in 2018 at E3. But strangely enough, it seems that these events here are actually happening more than a year before the E3 2019 trailer where the pilot originally found Chief. So I think 343 has changed the timeline most certainly at this point, but I think at this point it's safe to bet a good portion of the campaign will take place on Zeta Halo late May in 2560. It then says that we lost 165 days before the start of this cinematic, which is about 5 months prior, and that being some kind of epic battle happened regarding, the UNSC and may even include the Infinity itself being destroyed. That means a few months after awakening the nightmare, the Banished found themselves on Zeta Halo, took over this ring, and pretty much destroyed UNSC forces. We'll talk about this later. It seems that the Infinity is included in this destruction and has been completely obliterated. In fact, its destruction may be what caused the ring to explode here. I love this encounter between Chief and the pilot. The pilot is more like a human character, and it's funny enough, but we're actually supposed to be kind of living through the pilot. How would an average human deal with Master Chief? At least that's what 343 kind of talked about in a content creator meeting. But it's pretty clear that they got some duo going on for a good portion of the campaign. Also notice Cortana is nowhere to be seen or heard. Anyway, Beyond the Smoke shows large Banished turret. Unlike seen in the Mega Block toys, these turrets are pretty massive and probably about the size of a scarab, more or less, but we will see them closer in person later. But at the end of the gameplay demo, we're actually right under one of these things, so we'll see the exact size of it, and it's about the size of a scarab, to be honest. But not to mention, they're hard to reach, and strategic positioning makes it kind of a difficulty to reach, but we'll see that later in the gameplay as well. After the initial hit, there's tons of Foreigner architecture going on, lots of interior parts of the Foreigner ring breaking up. It looks like something a part of the ring has been kind of falling apart, like someone hacked into the ring systems rather than being affected by some big explosion like the Infinity blowing up. It looks like the Halo landscape grid is dislodged and falling apart, and that's why the world kind of looks a little bit Minecrafty in my opinion. And then it shows the pilot making an emergency landing, slowing down and then freezing on impact. There's actually some information right here, though I'm not sure what it means, but I thought it would be fair enough to just share, and maybe someone else can figure it out. All right, so I find this beginning so funny. The pilot literally loses consciousness. Meanwhile, Chief is hovering above him, not even buckled up, but of course he is unscathed and unaffected. Now, there's some tension going on here between the pilot and Master Chief, and it's actually been alluded to in the 343 meeting. Essentially, what's happening here is that the Banished is pretty excited about hunting down Master Chief, and by consequence, the pilot, because he's with Chief, has both become kind of targeted targets. And he is frustrated by this when I think the pilot just wants to leave and go home. But let's re-listen to the dialogue here and kind of take in the words and the context.
I thought I was going home.
There won't be a home if we don't stop the Banished.
You keep saying that. We're outgunned, outnumbered. I know I saw condors over there. I'm going to dig through them and find one with the working sleep space drive.
So the big takeaway here was the pilot's impression that Chief would run and escape. We saw that in E3 2019. However, the Chief makes a pretty big statement about the story, and he says there won't be a home if we don't stop the Banished, and the pilot responds, "You keep saying that." So Chief essentially just implied a really important plot point, and that is the Banished is threatening humanity, the human colonies, Earth, and so on. And maybe even something that the Banished do could threaten the entire galaxy, like the Covenant. In fact, in the 343 content creator meeting, they said that the Banished is sort of in themselves a spiritual reboot of the Covenant. And later in the video, the big bad brute at the end talks about how him and the Harbinger, the Banished, have essentially the same goal. And I wonder what that is. And if the Harbinger is Covenant remnants, then maybe the Banished are also interested in firing the Halo array, maybe. But the pilot also mentioned condors, which were pretty powerful vehicles seen in Halo Wars 2. They were basically really beefed up pelicans, I guess you could say. But from the looks of it, it seems like a lot of these vehicles from Halo Wars 2 may make a return. The narrative that this game has set up for us, and for new players to understand easily, is that a big massive battle happened. We don't know what happened. Maybe we will see through flashbacks. It was also sort of hinted at that Fireteam Osiris had something to do with all this, although maybe it's a reach, but I'll talk about that later. But my theory is, after the 343 content creator meeting, is that Fireteam Osiris, including Locke, died at the destruction of Zeta Halo. So there is a lot of Banished, and they're still undefeated, and it's only the Chief and pilot left, as well as plenty of kind of scattered soldiers, as mentioned later in the video. I should also point out the obvious but very important fact that, of course, Cortana is nowhere to be seen or heard. Anyway, the pilot says his goal is to dig through the condors and find a working slip space drive so that him and Chief can get the hell out of there after the Banished war is done with. And Master Chief agrees to help him, but only after the anti-air turrets are taken down. As rumored a while back, although it was one heck of an accurate rumor, 343 wants this game cinematics to be single shot. And as you will notice throughout pretty much this entire video, there is only one shot. And as you'll notice, since beginning to the end of this reveal, there is no breaks in the gameplay. In fact, the camera simply slides over Chief and then simply becomes the first-person perspective that Chief steps into. So very seamless and virtually pretty much exactly what I was saying it was going to be like about a month ago. But the HUD pops into view, and we see our two weapons, the AR with 36 bullets, 108 in storage, and also the grappling hook icon, which is a regenerating ability in campaign. However, in multiplayer, it's confirmed to work differently as a standard pickup, like you picking up a weapon and then dropping that pickup. So the grappling hook won't be there as a standard ability in multiplayer. And also, this ability does work under the grenade slot and is swappable within this section. So you don't have to lose this grappling hook if you pick up, for example, the drop wall. The top left shows us our objective, and as you'll see, 3 guns, we need to destroy these. They are not in any order, and this kind of gives us replayability. It kind of reminds me of the first or second mission in Halo Combat Evolved, and we can play our own way and essentially encounter these Banished how we want to. And stepping out here, we see what's going on. Wildlife is abundant. 343 actually intentionally kind of stopped and had the player look around, because this is what they wanted the player to do in the game, is to kind of take in everything, kind of how like maybe me and you did back in the day when we first played Halo Combat Evolved. Then we encounter some stray grunts. This may be the Harbinger group working with the Banished because their armor is essentially not red, but this is basically potentially a Covenant faction, and they might have intentions to fire the Halo ring, but whatever their intentions are, they have the same goals as the Banished. Obviously, the plasma pistol is making a return. However, in the pickup radius, notice the text here. It says pistol plasma charge. This is something we will see throughout the entire gameplay. Every time Chief walks near a weapon, there are short descriptions under the pickup and the format that the weapon is in, essentially. And it goes by type of weapon, type of projectile, and basically functionality. Now, there's an upgrade menu that we will talk about later, but this means that weapons may be customizable, if not completely craftable, to make unique weapons in the sandbox. Perhaps putting a part of a plasma pistol next to a plasma launcher and things like that, kind of building a unique weapon. Also, the radar looks a bit different, just take note of that, and also the 31M. Keep note of this gameplay, it is work in progress. In fact, 343 actually made this a quote little while ago, so it's not actually up to date, and also it's not using ray tracing. But we come to a banished phantom flying around. It looks pretty glitchy on the track, but again, it was probably just, it's probably incomplete, right? But I wonder if more extreme events or flyby events will happen when the player is exploring the world that are unique and perhaps based on a percentage. Will this event happen or will it not? There's also a fair amount of UNSC wreckage that can be seen throughout this gameplay demo, and I wonder if this wreckage will be, one, explorable, and two, if there will be hidden rewards that will kind of tell us about what happened that kind of caused Zeta Halo to kind of fall apart and break apart, but also just lore in general would be pretty cool, like terminals and things of that nature. So this next part confirms sprint. It is at least in campaign, and also notice that there's no counter, so it looks like you can run unlimited. I'm okay with this because this looks like a pretty big open world, but we'll see. But the Warthog looks fairly fast, probably to accommodate how big this world is, as it's, quote, several times larger than previous Halo games that 343 has worked on. And also, basically what we saw with 343's campaign level designer in his open world mission demo, essentially there is a lot to look at, there's a lot of places to go, and there's a lot of hidden story details within the world. We are brought to this start menu, and there is a lot to unpack here. All right, so the green arrow is obviously where we are and where we're looking. There's also this yellow icon, which I believe represents the mission origin, basically where Chief first got his mission. In this case, it would be the pilot's crashed Pelican location. There's actually a few icons up here that might be representing other missions, or maybe the supply mission for the Condor mission to find the slip space drive. But here we actually see that we need to find one of these and 4 of these. And also there is a difficulty icon here. For this one, we see that this is normal difficulty with some kind of square. I wonder if these difficulties will go up and down depending on how difficult a place is. And also, I wonder how they will deal with the difficulties, starting up the campaign. But from what I heard in the 343 meeting, is essentially the same, and especially from the main menu, you can select your difficulty. But perhaps when approaching more difficult places, this right here will be ticked up. There's a star at 320 that might be kind of indicating how strong the stronghold is and what you're going up against. So notice that the red icons here represent the AA cannons, the current mission, the cannons that we have to take down and destroy, and whichever order, by the way, that we want to take down first. There's also large ravines that are made up by the Forerunner grid falling apart that is making it pretty much impossible to get to other sections of the world, kind of influencing where the player is able to go at a certain part in the campaign. But if you look at the top half of the map here, that should be explorable at some time in the campaign, given that the red icons are here. And actually, according to Ready Up Live during a 343 private meeting with him, essentially the developers had a hard time answering where can you not explore. So a lot of the vistas you see are pretty much explorable, and that was something that was implied in Halo 1, but technology didn't really make it possible. And I actually just saw this. I don't think we're supposed to see this. I think it was a glitch in the demo, but it essentially shows all the locations in full opacity and exposed. So right here, we actually see 2 blue bases, Golf Base and Echo Base. These are probably places that we can visit that are more like UNSC, kind of protective bases that we can maybe craft weapons or whatever. But we also see Orko Vagordum, I guess is how you say it, but probably a target, because there's like a target right there. Maybe we have to kill some banished commander there. But we also see Green Spire, probably a banished outpost. And then we see a place called the Tower. This isn't the tower because basically that's on the left of Chief and this is on the far right. So that isn't the Foreigner Tower that we've been seeing. I'm sure hoping that we get to visit that Foreigner Tower, but at least there is a place called the Tower, but it has a locked icon, which means that we probably can't go there. But we also see on the top left near TAC map, Marine Rescue K. So there's probably places that we can visit that can, the whole mission is focused on bringing them from point A to point B and essentially saving them. Also, Conservatory is on the top middle there. I wonder what that place is. We also see a few more similar icons, but a lot of them on the top middle. Essentially, pressing A on the map can allow you to set a waypoint, right and left trigger for zoom in and zoom out, Y to view missions, which honestly adds to the open world aspect. And I wonder if there will be multiple mainline story missions or just one along with side missions that you can also complete. But as we zoom into this text, it says this AA cannon is controlled by a command console inside a control room underneath the cannon. Use the weapon to hack into the console and destroy them. This is what Chief will tackle later in the gameplay. So we leave this screen, then proceed to go off to a nicely placed ramp in the environment. Take note of the mid-air jump. There's actually some slight correction. It's very easy to miss, but it looks like while we are in the air with the hog going off a ramp, for example, we can actually have some controlled tilting so we don't completely flip on impact. Then we encounter the first stronghold where immediately we witness a suicide grunt explode. And from what I can tell, there is no body left, just body bits and blood everywhere. Headshotting grunts in the right way causes this really epic green splatter, and old elite design is back. Weapon pickups like the Needler aren't seen, but are certainly there in the gameplay, and also what appears to be the Halo 3 carbine is coming back, but that might be just another weapon, which we'll talk about later. But we also have this white circle effect by these weapons, and that's probably to help the players notice and that they can pick those weapons up. Aim down sight seems to be gone, but this new rifle, VK78 Commander, has a description of tactical rifle, kinetic, and auto under it. And it does have a zoom of sorts. It's not like aim down the sights, it's much more like a battle rifle zoom, kind of classic Halo-ish, but it's kind of like a heavy DMR, but like an auto machine gun, and fires these very heavy shots at a good range, though there's only about 20 bullets to a clip. The Banished are also confirmed to come down in drop pods like the Covenant have done in the past, but these actually have red markers to let us know right before impact that they're coming down and where. I found it strange that they dropped without weapons and immediately did glamour moves and basically left themselves open for, being thrown with a sticky on them. But, it's just kind of weird. The particles on the plasma grenade are actually looking really artistic, and I love it. Also, the drop pods just explode, so take note of that. Also, the Banished Brutes are confirmed to be going into rage states again, although I'm not terribly convinced. I think their movement is a bit hilarious and too human, and I'm scared like in Halo 2 when the Brutes went, savage and raged. But anyway, moments later, we see spike grenades. Obviously, these things are coming back from Halo 3, and I'm super excited about it. But take note of the fusion coil pickup. We will see that later, that Chief can pick up these and throw them at enemies. In fact, he can even use these as a, grappling hook, because any objects in the environment that Chief grapples will come towards him, and any enemy he grapples, he will go towards. So that's something that 343 confirmed in the content creator meeting. Speaking of throwing, the flying grunts are actually thrown by brutes, by the way, if you're wondering. I approve of this because it's kind of adding to the sandbox, and it works for at least campaign. I think it was alluded to in the meeting, but I'd have to make sure. I think that Master Chief can actually pick up grunts and throw them as well, but I'm not quite sure about that. We will see. I think that would be hilarious. But Chief picks up a new ability, the drop wall, which, by the way, like the grapple shot, aka the grapple hook, right, are actually pickups in multiplayer. But anyway, the drop wall apparently catches grenades like the spike grenade. The drop wall is a one-way shield, so effectively it blocks incoming fire while allowing you to shoot at your enemies. But anyway, Chief does a slide here, pretty easy to miss, but it looks like an inherent ability that Chief will have along with clamber and sprint, which are also seen in the gameplay. Though once Chief uses the drop shield, he somehow immediately gets the grapple shot back. If you notice, upon pickup, this ability is probably like a grenade swap, kind kind of having like multiple abilities, although they're like, you know, you can swap through them. Anyway, the grapple shot actually gives the player the opportunity to jump towards the enemy in melee or even throw a grenade. And it looks like while in the mid grapple, you can actually cancel your grapple and retain some momentum, which might be useful for some specific combat situations. But I also wonder if you can use this with fusion coils and throw them at you while dodging them and using it against an enemy. But later we swap with the Ravager, some kind of launcher plasma burst weapon, but it's certainly banished, and it actually shoots really deadly burst, but it gets too hot really fast, so you kind of need to work on your shots here. But also the pistol looks like some kind of mix of Halo 2's classic design. Personally, I don't think it looks too Halo, but to be fair, it did kind of look like this in Halo 2. Upon the elevator ride up, we can see that the world has been kind of broken up through the Foreigner grid system that, for whatever reason, is all over the place. However, I believe this part will play a crucial role in the open world design and navigation and progress for the player. Also, again, the birds flying by indicate a large wildlife presence. We've seen like possums, we've seen other animals throughout the gameplay, and also notice that the sun's location is to the far right of the Halo ring, very far right. Later, the ring is seen way lower, meaning that basically this confirms dynamic lighting, that day and night cycles will be a thing on the Halo array. This other weapon, the Pulse Carbine, is actually a percentage plasma-based weapon, and maybe what we saw earlier, so maybe it's not the Halo 3 Carbine, but rather this weapon. We also have this smaller handheld gun, the Mangler, which is basically an alien revolver, dealing a heavy amount of damage, and it seems to fire just one bullet, so it's great for headshots. We also have this grappling shot action, which honestly has limitless use, and you can encounter situations like this, combat scenarios, in very different ways. In fact, that was kind of encouraged by the person playing this to basically do anything they want, because there's certain events that will be set up depending on how the player encounters different situations in different ways. But there's also a 9-second cooldown I counted on the grappling hook. You can also see this zip towards enemies, and that you can also use to grab fusion coils and throw them at turrets, for example. And during this segment, we're actually underneath the turret, so you can have an idea how big this thing is. We're also introduced to the Bulldog shotgun, which is kind of like an automatic shotgun, and it appears to be weaker. It's a kinetic spread type weapon, which is really awesome, probably noob friendly, but I don't think it's a replacement for the standard shotgun. Also, the ambient music in the background sounds great, and I think it may be procedurally generated based on the situation. Chief then goes up to the Banished turret, where we see this mysterious character first teased earlier this month, but he clearly states that the UNSC lost, which is obvious at this point because we've seen a lot of wreckage earlier in the gameplay, but it appears all who are left are the Banished and Chief along with the pilot, but also scattered troops all over the ring, probably from the Infinity. And I actually get to the Infinity in just a moment here. So this cutaway shot shows the pilot dropping to his knees at a crash site. This is probably where he lost many of his friends and higher-ups, perhaps died and lost during the Banished battle. We also see a whole repair patch kit, so I wonder if there were other Pelicans that crashed in this site. Again, probably friends. But Chief is in the Pelican looking at random IDs in blue and tags all saying Infinity, some with ONI logos, UNSC logos, and even ODST logos. These are all probably tags as they're kind of listed, you know, which branch are they under as individuals. And notice that they're all scattered all over the place with the Pelican in the middle, and then obviously, and then they all turn to red saying deceased. What I think is that the Infinity got destroyed and everyone a part of the Infinity escaped, and even the escapees were hunted down and killed by the Banished. And the Banished apparently had very little trouble with this battle, that they kind of steamrolled Chief and the others. And it's confirmed that the ring at this point is under the Brute's control. They also mention Harbinger, which is probably the more classic looking Covenant faction. 343 also told me and other content creators that the Brutes are kind of excited and intrigued by the Spartans' will to keep fighting after defeat defeat. So the Banished is a little bit entertained by Master Chief. Now on to the shorter gameplay trailer. The Brute, the big bad Brute, Escriam, or however you say it, declares that the Banished thought that Chief was dead. The energy sword is to come back, but with a grappling hook, makes for some epic sandbox combat opportunities. We also see this bizarre electricity grenade, some kind of taser that basically, when it bounces around the map, although it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon, is basically stunning enemies along the way and kind of like chaining them as well. So enemies near enemies that are getting electrocuted are also getting stunned. And I'm also really excited to see this used in multiplayer and how it might slow down the player or stun the player briefly. We also see the battle rifle for just a couple of frames. It isn't used in the gameplay, but at least we know it's coming back in Halo Infinite. Guys, be sure to snag yourself that free Halo audiobook. It's a quick sign up, link down in the description. And if you watched this far, thank you so much. If you haven't already, be sure to drop this video a like to help the video on the search results. I appreciate it a lot. Guys, I have tons more to unpack and break down here on the channel. Lots of more Halo news to dive deeper into especially the aforementioned. There's a lot of story stuff and theories I want to get into later, but I hope this satisfied your urge to know more about the gameplay. So be sure to subscribe. Tons more content is coming, and I'll see you guys soon. All right, peace.